And welcome to Weather and Ag in Focus here on this hot Wednesday. We're closing the month of July out here very shortly, and we're ending it on a hot note. I'm Chief Meteorologist Dean Wysocki, along with our Ag Director, Bridgette Readel. Another hot one out there. It's like a broken record, Bridgette.
I can tell you that tomorrow, the chance of it being in the 80s and that being cooler seems crazy. In fact, I'm down in Baltic, South Dakota already for tomorrow's Ag PhD Field Day, brought to us by Ag PhD and the Hefty Seed Company. And all I can think about is tomorrow might not be over 90. And I'm very, very happy about that.
It probably will be there, I would think. It's going to be close.
Nope.
You don't think so?
I've been watching.
Okay.
I've been watching the forecast. We're going to see, but they're actually giving us a high down here tomorrow of 75 with 50% storms.
That it would be because of the storms that would keep the temperatures down. Yeah, and I'll tell you, those areas are going to be, in fact, just north of Baltic too, in for some heavier rainfall. Boy, I wish we could squeeze some of that up here in the FM area. Although there will be parts of the area that do get some really beneficial rains. But I'll tell you what. It looks like it's going to fall just south of the FM area. But we're looking at the hot rest of the day today. In fact, temperatures out there should reach the upper 90s as we head into the rest of the afternoon. We're already in the low to mid 90s, and we do have a heat advisory in effect for the valley from Fargo northward through Grand Forks. And we're looking at partly cloudy skies overnight tonight, lows in the low 70s, and then tomorrow, we'll see an increase in clouds, showers, and thunderstorms pull in from the west as we head into the afternoon with highs in the mid-80s. And then showers and thunderstorms continue through the evening hours before exiting the area down to our south with overnight lows tomorrow night in the 60s. And then we're in the upper 80s for Friday and in the 90s as we head into the weekend. Now, rainfall amounts, and most of this is going to be along and south of the 94 corridor. We're looking at about a quarter to a half inch here in the FM area. But as you go south, in fact, it won't take much. And this is how thunderstorms kind of react during the summertime. If you get caught under one of these heavier thunderstorms, you could pick up a quick half inch to an inch, while 10, 15 miles north or south, nothing. So, and I'm afraid that's kind of how this is going to line up. Over parts of the area where the northern valley doesn't get really much. And in the FM area, we could have, again, a general quarter, half inch. But if you get caught under a thunderstorm, areas around the FM area could pick up close to an inch. I think the higher likelihood for that is going to be in the far southern valley over towards Fergus Falls and points southward. Those areas stand the best chance of seeing 1 to 2 inches of rainfall. So the further south you go from the FM area, the higher likelihood is of some higher snowfall snowfall. Gee, boy, wouldn't that sound nice right now? Higher rainfall totals.
Well, for those of you who are putting out your rain gauges in anticipation of rain, or maybe you've taken them down because you're terrified that's what's keeping it from raining. I mean, I literally had an agronomist yesterday with a bird's nest being built in his rain gauge, if that gives you any indication of how long it has been since it rained. For those of you who are, especially if you have one of our WDAY starter plastic rain gauges, we would love for you to let us know what you will receive tomorrow. And you can do that by calling us on the JLA Insurance phone line, 701-293-9000. You can send us emails, ag or weather at flagfamily.com. And the live stream will be very lively the next 2 days. It's brought to us by Lighthouse Commodities. It will be on Acres TV, Facebook, and YouTube. In fact, I will be on the Acres TV stage tomorrow when it's time to do this show, so that people who are here at the audience at Ag PhD can watch right along with those of you who are watching on the Acres TV app, on our other live streams, or just listening over the air. So there'll be a lot going on tomorrow, still with the anticipation of several thousand people being here for this event. It's all free. Free parking, free food. There's free water in troughs about every 15 feet. It's very tidy. There's lots to learn. And if you get the opportunity, there is something for everyone from kids to the adults who want to learn at many of the different sessions. I've got 3 different panels I'll be moderating throughout the day, as well as having this show going on. So tomorrow's going to be a busy day. I'm planning on taking a little nap on Friday.
Nothing wrong with that. As long as it's not during
Yeah.
the show.
Am I allowed to
You
nap
never
during
know.
the show?
You nap every day during the show.
Shut People don't know that.
Yeah, well, all
Shush.
right. And the cat's out of the bag
Steve
now.
might be listening.
Nah, Steve ain't listening. He's got better things to do.
So, speaking of things you could do and ways that you could be listening and hearing what's happening, there is a farm in Iowa, the Herbert family, that they have a teenage sons who run their equipment, and some of it's older equipment. And the boys decided, you know what? We're tired of having terrible radio systems. Now, having grown up with just AM FM, and a lot of times the AM didn't stick, it would like roll through the dial on its own. I understand what it's like to have a little bit better radio in your wants and needs for a tractor or for a vehicle. Well, the kids decided they could do better. And so TL Herbert, his wife, and their 3 teenage sons sparked the idea that has become cab radio upgrade kits. Literally, this kit features a dedicated screen that allows the operators to wirelessly connect their phones as well as hands-free calling, so you can have music, you can make calls, and the quality's better. So instead of having to yell at each other on the two-way or not hear each other through the phone, now you could be doing it through the Bluetooth in the cab. It also integrates 2 cameras into the whole system. So if you're the grain cart driver, and remember that t-shirt out there, world's okayest grain cart driver, well, you could improve because you could be using the cameras to be watching what's going on in the cart where you need to be moving or what other implements you might be pulling behind you. It is currently specifically engineered for John Deere tractors, the 7000 to the 730s, the 8000 to the 830s, the 9000 to the 930 series. So probably a nice little upgrade if you spend a lot of time in those particular pieces of equipment. And I also can say it's a far cry from those of us who have had radios that screwed onto the fender next to you when you didn't have a cab and you tried to shout and scream over the loud noise of the engine and just tried to hear your AM radio that way. It really didn't work as easily as one would have hoped. So that's one way you can upgrade some of your current equipment. With so many other things going on, one of the things to talk about is the fact that uh, Kathy Egan Spicer, she was raised on a farm near Walhalla, North Dakota, up in Pembina County. Back in 1982, she was a student at UND. Her dad, Ted, was farming, and during the fall of the year during harvest, he slipped on the rung of a ladder, was spun around, and landed on their unguarded PTO shaft on the piece of equipment he was working with. That created a tsunami of change within the family. It happened that now all of a sudden somebody needed to finish harvest. Her brothers had to take over. Her dad, Ted, was hospitalized for rehab for an entire year before he could come back to the farm. And what happened in those years really stuck with Kathy all along her adult life. So recently, she's created a documentary called Listen Up and Stay Safe. She presents to farm groups, businesses, co-ops, and lots of others. It not only details the events of that day, but also leads to a bigger conversation about farm safety. Here in the summer months, we usually see an uptick in farm safety incidents because we are seeing more people active on the farm. We have a lot more equipment moving around. We're working with livestock more frequently. All the above can cause those problems. Kathy wants to make sure people are well aware of her documentary. She will, in fact, be joining us here on Weather and Ag in Focus in August to give us some of that background and details. And that way, if you have an interest, you can hear more about it and then book her to be a part of one of your next meetings or community events. She would love to be able to talk with you, but as well be able to share the video that she and her family have helped to create. Well, besides all the things going on with Ag PhD Field Day, we've got guests today. And our first guest, our main guest today is going to be Greg Steman. He's in studio. Greg is not only a North Dakota state legislator, he is a former banker in the region, and he also has some hands in farming down in the Lemoore, North Dakota area. So we're going to pick his brain on a number of different topics as we go through today, as well as it's Wednesday weather trivia. We're going to want to work that in as soon as we can too. So don't go anywhere. You'll have your chance to win one of our Darter plastic bait ups for your own personal bait station. And so much more will be happening when we return after the livestock market from the American Ag Network. Well, if it just so happens you'll be joining me here in Baltic, South Dakota for Ag PhD Field Day, you get to visit with Chris Sherman of Tech Support Farm. He is also going to be here not only as an exhibitor, but as a speaker. And this gives you the opportunity for Chris to answer your questions specifically about your farm, cybersecurity, and so much more. So take the opportunity, look him up. Chris Sherman, he's with Tech Support Farm, and he can walk you right through that fence check assessment to get that done and taken care of so that you can have more peace of mind. Speaking of peace of mind, it's not often you get to take a little chunk of what's going on in a state legislator's life and ask them so that you have better peace of mind. And we get to do that today. Greg Steman is joining us in studio. He's a North Dakota State legislator. He is a retired banker in the farm and agribusiness divisions. And he's got some ties to farming back in Lemoore, North Dakota. So Greg, do you get to spend some time on a tractor yet, or has that sort of passed for you at this point?
That's a great question. I would say about 5 or 6 years ago, they let me run the roller over the soybean field, and I was able to navigate the GPS. But that's the last time I've been in a machine. I'd be scared to get in one of the big red combines right now, or run one of the planters. Now, what my nephews, they're great with all that stuff, but I would probably damage some $50,000 computer, and they don't need that type of loss on the farm.
So what you're saying is they asked for your help, but then they didn't ask again.
Yeah. For some reason they weren't. But I actually did a decent job last time I was there. But no, it's been a long time since I've been in. I still have great appreciation for the industry and just the work and time that they put into it, and obviously the margins are concerning right now. I mean, you're close to that. I'm close to that. I don't rely on it, but our state does. You know, our state does from an economic standpoint.
So that was one of the questions I wanted to talk about today. When you think about what's happening weather-wise right now, and as we drove down to Baltic today, you could see some very drought-stressed corn. You also saw wheat that was coming off out of the field. We know that there's a tremendous amount of variability in this crop. With your insight as a legislator, how does this impact what happens at the state level? Will it for our next biennium, or are we just going to kind of roll with it and it's what happens at more of a personal level than what happens at anything at state level?
No, it's a really good question because, I mean, we rely on revenues from, income tax and also sales tax. You know, when you have people buying less, that impacts the sales tax revenue side of things. We don't want to increase it. We've been lowering income tax, state income tax, to the point where we're not too far from zero. And I know there's some fellow legislators that want to get to zero on that, but it still impacts revenues. And we've talked about this before, Bridgette. I mean, we are a state that relies on volatile commodity revenue. And whether it's on the west side when it comes to gas and oil, the central and the eastern part where they're really focused on the farming, ranching side of things. The ranching side of things is kind of carrying the ag sector at this point, right? But it's, there's no question it impacts us at the state level, especially when it comes to budgeting.
When I definitely want to come back to talk about livestock in just a moment, so I'm making myself a note. But when you think about the money that's being brought down from the federal level, we were just told that there's going to be about an $11 million boost, or $11 billion boost that's coming out in farm aid. Do you see that as a positive, or is it net neutral? What's your opinion on that based on your background?
Well, a lot of when you ask about my background, it's anecdotal as an ag lender. I know. I mean, don't get me wrong. I have yet to see an ag producer that says I'm sending this check back. You know, I'm not going to accept it. Of course,
right.
It's necessary or it's helpful, but they don't want to rely on that. They don't want that to be their means to their success. They want to be able to function and make their margin and pay all the bills and debt service and all those things and still have enough to live on and gain equity in their operation. But those things, you know, when I look at it from a legislative standpoint, that's a certain number of dollars, probably in the case of North Dakota, hundreds of millions, that gets put back into the economy and gets turned over multiple times. And I mean, people can say all they want, you know, we shouldn't be subsidizing. I think we can't afford to risk losing production in the ag sector. And at the same time, sometimes those programs are necessary. And but I don't know of a producer that I ever worked with that said, yeah, I want to rely on that to make my operation cash flow.
No, a hand up, not a handout is
Correct.
often what's mentioned. Yes, I would agree with that completely. And often when those checks come out, they are helpful to the farm. They are helpful to Main Street, but they don't always get to the point of paying down debt. They're probably just keeping things current.
That's accurate. That's accurate, and that's the other thing. There were times, when in putting a cash flow together, where a producer might say, "Well, I'm expecting this much in government payment." I said, "No, we're not going to include that because that can be talked about. It can be promised, but it doesn't until the check has been cashed and the funds have been deposited. That's not a positive, or that's not a guarantee." And so I just think factoring those payments in is not good financial practice when it comes to projecting. Those have to be considered a bonus or filling a gap of, when you put together your commodity prices and then all of a sudden 3 months down the road or right during harvest, those commodity prices have dropped. Those types of payments have to be used for those things, filling the gaps that are necessary to make your operation cash flow.
The district that you represent at the state level is fairly urban, but also still represents farmers. And so, do you get a chance to voice those opinions on some of the farm policy, or are you held to other committees that take more of your time?
I would venture to say, I've never asked Doug Goring this, but I would venture to say that I have one of the more pro-ag voting records in the entire legislature. And it's my background. When it comes to those types of policies that can potentially positively impact the ag sector, that matters to me. And whether it's my background or whether it's just a forward-thinking thought process that I want our state to continue to get better and stronger, especially in the areas where we're already strong. I don't want us to settle for where we're at. I'm very pro-ag. And to your point, I sit in an urban district. However, I also sit in probably the most productive, I also have probably tens of thousands of acres, some of the most productive farmland in the world, sit right in the Red River Valley. And so I'm very fortunate to kind of have that diversity within my district. And believe me, it's a blessing in a lot of ways. And at the same time, every year I just gain more and more respect for the ag profession because it gets tougher and tougher, and it gets more and more difficult to make things cash flow. Efficiencies are so important, and that's why continual advancement in the technology side of ag, I think, is invaluable. I know it costs some money. When you look at tiling, maximizing the production of the soil that you're farming. When you look at the precision farming, and just making sure you're getting every possible value you can out of your seed and not wasting any, whatever it might be, and just the application of fertilizer and spray, to be able to analyze that and the variable rate, how much that can possibly save and be the difference between profit and loss, I just think matters. So I'd love to see those types of things in the ag sector continue to develop, and North Dakota is one of the best proving grounds there is.
One of the things that I wanted to ask you about today is really just to put on that banker's hat for just a minute and think about, you've got a young producer who walks in the door, wants to purchase a piece of equipment, or is looking at a possible purchase of land and wanting to do some expansion essentially. And I'm curious what that process is and what you walk through with them, some of that best learned experience that you might have, the institutional knowledge, right? What are some of the things that you're going to share with that young individual in order to help them make that decision? Because it's ultimately theirs, but sometimes you have to give them this is good or this is bad, and why.
It's a great question because I think there's so many factors involved. You and I have addressed certain things along these lines in the past, but we want younger producers. In fact, I just drove by Baltic this past weekend twice down to Northwest Iowa for a family reunion and then back up. And crops in Northwest Iowa look very good, I will tell you that. But I was talking to my brother, and he was talking about getting saying he might sell half a section to his son. and just because he wants to what you talked about earlier, can we give a hand up rather than a handout? As a banker, I may say, can you get better terms from someone who might carry the paper on your land? Instead of me charging you 6.25% on ag real estate purchase, can you get someone who's willing to sell it, whether it's your dad, whether it's your uncle, whether it's your neighbor, to say, hey, can you carry the paper for 4%, at least for a while, to get me up and running? And 4% is not terrible, and you could have some people that are willing to sell that land. Obviously, they're going to take the money, or they may do a contract for deed, whatever it might be. But don't always assume there's one avenue to get that purchase done. I think there's other opportunities, other conversations that can be had, and I think the ag sector is probably one of the more. I want to make sure I use the right word, but it's the ag sector is a lot of people that know each other in the same area that don't share every secret about production, but everybody kind of knows how everybody else does something else, and how they run their operation, and when they're thinking about retiring, when they're thinking about doing these things, and the willingness to, going back to what you said, giving a hand up rather than a handout, saying, you know what, I'll do 4% for you for a while until you can manage this, until you can cash flow, and then maybe if you have a good year, maybe we bump that up a little bit, and we kind of go from there. But sometimes the banker isn't always the answer. But you have that, discussion with mom and or dad, and then the neighbor or the individual who might be interested in making that an easier decision and making it a more palatable decision, so it doesn't put you in a negative cash flow situation. Because young farmers they're up against it right now, especially when you look at the numbers. But what other avenues are there to actually have some of these conversations where someone that you never even expected might be willing to say, I can live with those terms. I'm okay. I don't need to be making a ton of extra money right now. I'm sitting okay. Quarter of land, I can carry the paper at a lower rate than what you can get at the bank. And sometimes that's all the difference between profitability and maybe not quite making it.
Well, let's be honest. Nobody ever comes back and says, geez, the land got cheaper in the future. That it's always, I should have bought the land when I had the chance. So we got to think about those things. Well, we will continue to think about those things. And I want to visit about the livestock sector just a little bit when we return and continue our conversation with Greg Steman, North Dakota State Legislator. Thanks for joining us on Weather and Ag in Focus today. We are joined with our guest, Greg Steman, state legislator, retired banker, and just a wealth of knowledge about the region and things that happen here, especially agriculturally related. Okay, Greg, this might be a little bit of an unusual question, but it occurred to me. We often talk about our crop producers, and I certainly don't want to leave out our livestock producers. Right now, anybody, if they're in crops or livestock, they're all drinking whiskey, but for very different reasons, good or bad.
That's right.
When you talk about the livestock, though, if you think about this from a finance perspective, would it be solid advice to remind folks that if you have cattle, if you are hauling cattle, if you have a sale barn, are you covered? Because 5 years ago, if a load of cattle got T-boned on the highway, yep, that was a loss. Now that loss is about 5 or 6 times higher. And I would venture a guess there's some agribusinesses out there not covered for such a situation.
It's a really good point, Bridgette, because it's, to your point, it's become much more necessary. But sometimes when it happens, just kind of ascends over the course of time. You don't. If it was kind of a all of a sudden a ridiculous spike out of nowhere, that would kind of heighten everybody to go, all right, how do we handle this? But when it kind of gradually takes place, you're not always thinking along those lines of, good Lord, I mean, this is, if I lose what this is worth, it's a huge impact on our operation. So that's a great point. Remember that when we talked about your team that you want to put together, if you're a producer, whether it's your banker, your tax attorney, your accountant, whoever it is, husband and wife, or all members of the operation, and just kind of, it's always good to sit down and have discussions and throw things out there, because not everybody thinks of everything. And sometimes we assume, well, the person who's in charge has thought about this. Not the case. And I think about this even legislatively, Bridgette. There are times when I go, well, somebody else has to be thinking about this, so I won't worry about it. And that's not the case. And so that's why when you sit down with your ag team, hey, what are we missing here? Are we covered here? And it's so important. It's a great investment to make sure you have loss coverage for what has become incredibly high value livestock. And so I think that's a good question. And those types of meetings, kind of brainstorming, saying, have we thought about this? Have we covered this? Even, the old adage, there is no such thing as a dumb question. Sometimes everybody assumes that somebody else took care of it, and it never got taken care of, And I think it's good to have those conversations for all that are involved in the decision-making process, just to make no improper assumptions have been made, and that we're thinking, well, somebody else took care of this. I can't be the only one that thought of it. Somebody else did too.
Well, if you're the guy saying, is anybody else thinking about this, whether it comes legislatively, et cetera, what should we be thinking about as we start going to our next legislative season? As taxpayers, as citizens, are there some items that should be on our radar that we should be talking to our legislators about so they have good input from us?
Well, it's always good, and thanks for asking that question. It's always good to reach out to your legislator. I mean, I get emails quite often. I'll get calls on occasion. Our cell phone numbers are on the legislative website. Our legislative emails are easily accessible. We are the most accessible legislature in the country. Right now, the average population of districts is slightly below 19,000, about 18,800. Now, my district, the way it's growing, it's probably closer to 22,000. But your ability to access your legislator is as high percentage as any state in the country when it comes to talking to your North Dakota legislator. Now, things that we got to think about. People need to understand the governor has asked state agencies, the large state agencies, to cut their general fund spending by 10% when they put their budget together. And that's a lot of money in some cases. He's asked the mid-sized ones to cut by 3 to 5% general fund spending. And then the smaller agencies, he said, have a hold steady budget. In other words, don't increase it, but I'm not going to ask you to cut it. He wants these to be put together. I will tell you this, as a former college basketball coach, on more than one occasion I got asked, you need to put together a 95% budget. It's one of the best things you can do. Is all of a sudden you're combing through things and you go, well, this has been here for 8 years and we've never really spent it. What do you want versus what do you need to be effective? And I think our agencies will benefit from this, because we do have a general fund right now. We have a widening gap that we've got to address, a widening gap between revenues and expenditures. And now, gas and oil have spiked in the last 3 months, so there's a few extra $100 million coming into the general fund. But we've got to make sure, we can't count on that. We budgeted for $59 a barrel the first year, $57 a barrel the second. Well, I checked yesterday, it was at 82. July, it averaged over 100. Either June or July, it averaged over $100 a barrel for the month. So obviously we're exceeding expectations on that revenue. But I think as a legislature, we've got to be disciplined enough to use those dollars for one-time spending needs if necessary. We've got to close that gap between the revenue and the ongoing expenditures, especially in the general fund. I think that there's going to be a desire for people to add to the property tax. The $1,600, try to push that as close to $2,000 as we can. Will it get there? We'll see what the numbers look like. We'll see what the budget looks like. But any issues and concerns that you have, I think data centers, believe me, the artificial intelligence. There's been a recent interim committee that's been put together, and I talked about this on one of the other shows. Jonathan Worry from Castleton is chairing it, and I appreciate Senator Hogue, Leader Hogue, asking that committee to be put together, because we want to put together kind of a game plan for local political subdivisions, whether it's communities, townships, counties, to say, hey, what are the things that we've got to be looking at? What are the proper questions we've got to be asking? And I just think that's forward thinking. It's a hot button issue. There's a lot of information that gets used out there that is not accurate, but it can fire people up, for lack of a better term. And we've got to make sure that we can have a reasonable discussion when it comes to those things. So there's no question that there's going to be some legislation around those items.
I appreciate you bringing those forward, because you're right. Let's start having those discussions now. Let's share what we think, and let's ask the right questions. This whole data center deal, I need someone who can be right down the middle, who can answer questions for me factually without emotion tied to it on both ends of the spectrum. I haven't found that person yet, but I will keep asking my questions until I do. So then I'll learn more as well. So, Greg, thank you for your time today, for coming in and joining us. And just we wanted to ask and shoot and hit random questions that we thought were important, and we did. And thank you.
Thank you very much. I always appreciate that.
Thanks, Greg.
Guys.
Thank you so much. And when we come back, we'll have our weather trivia. We'll also run down a recap of the weather, which includes finally some rain in it. I'll have more on that coming up after the break. And welcome back to Weather and Ag in Focus. 1:49 in the afternoon. Temperatures outside in the low 90s. We'll make it up today into the upper 90s. Heat advisory is in effect for the Fargo area and points northward in the valley. It's going to be, we'll have heat index readings approaching 105 later this afternoon. And then tonight, partly cloudy, low 70s. Tomorrow, we're looking at thunderstorms entering the area from the west as we head into the afternoon. Morning hours should be dry, but afternoon, we'll start to see some showers and storms come in from the west. And this is generally along and south of the 94 corridor. That will continue into Thursday evening, probably wrapping up by 8, 9 o'clock the way it looks, with mid-80s tomorrow. We could see about a quarter, a half inch here in the FM area with heavier amounts to our south. And then upper 80s to low 90s Friday and Saturday, and then upper 90s Sunday, mid 90s Monday, and then another cold front brings a chance for storms Monday night. And that will lead to cooler weather as we head into next week. And this weather has been brought to you by the Hot Tub and Sauna Store. Imagine sinking into a brand new Caldera spa. Hot tubs built for pure comfort, super efficient energy use, and the best part, it's easy saltwater maintenance. Just imagine coming home to that every night. If you have a bad back like I do, it really does help. And for serious health benefits, step into a Findlay sauna so you can train, detox, and truly relax right at home. The Hot Tub and Sauna Store. Stop by today next to Costco in West Fargo. Well, now it's time for Wednesday Weather Trivia for your chance to win a Darter Plastic Bait-Up Cup. And today's question. Let's see if Addison knows this one.
7.
Close.
Blue red.
6.
Holy cow. You're spot. Wow. Well, I'm not.
I just blew the
No,
trivia.
you weren't even close. Yeah, just playing along with you. What is an ISO Hyatt? What is an ISO Hyatt? What?
Oh, is that different than a Dairy Queen?
It is,
Like
yes.
a Tasty Freeze?
Yes.
It sounds like some kind of knockoff candy bar my grandma would buy me.
Yeah. 701-293-9000 for your chance to win one of our Darter Plastic Bait-Up Cups. What is an ISO Hyatt? ISO Hyatt. 701-293-9000. I can hear the Google machines going in full force right now.
While those are going on, don't forget that tomorrow, right here on WDAY, will be the Summer Savings Spectacular live auction that'll go on from 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock. You can call in and be bidding on things like a Red Hawk sweep, power tools, sides of beef, dinner for 8 at Didi's, and much, much more. This is a live auction. Jay Thomas, Dean, Janae White, and Steve Hallstrom are all going to be a part of it. So pay attention tomorrow, 2 to 4. You're going to want to have some fun with that auction and the items that are available on it.
And actually, we're extending that till about 5 o'clock now, Bridgette. Yeah,
Nice.
We're extending that another hour. And there are some great items on there. There really is. So, yeah, make sure to be listening in right after tomorrow, right after Weather and Ag in Focus. It'll be live. You can put your bids in live, and yeah, it'll be a fun time. There's that green. Did you see a picture of that greenhouse? That thing is huge.
I did.
Woof.
I did. And at a value of $6,500.
Right.
I'm kind of hoping that I get done with all my stuff so I can start bidding on that myself.
Right, exactly.
Just a thought.
All right.
If-
Well, no callers yet. Again, for Wednesday Weather Trivia,
go on.
what is an, I'll spell it, ISOHYET, ISO Hyatt. What is an ISO Hyatt? For your chance to win a Darter Plastic Bait-Up Cup. So if you're a fisherman, you're going to want one of these. These things come in handy when you're out angling out there.
Also, WDAY wants to make sure that you get to be part of the Ultimate Gridiron Getaway. That's going to be going on in Las Vegas. That contest starts on, well, it started this Monday. Never mind, it already started. And if you are a qualifier, when you hear the winning sounder, you call in, get qualified, because on September 14th will be the time we figure out who really is taking a round trip airfare for 2 from Fargo to Vegas, 3-night hotel stay, VIP tickets to a favorite college football game versus UNLV on October 10th. And while you're at the game, that's tickets on the 50-yard line, access to the Champions Club, and unlimited premium food and drink while you're there. Lots going on. So you got to be paying attention to all those sounders. And don't forget to call us right now on the JLA Insurance phone line, 701-293-9000, so you get a chance to win a Wednesday Weather Trivia.
All right, and we've got Todd on line 1 with a guest. Todd, welcome to Weather and Ag. What's your guess for Wednesday Weather Trivia?
It's an imaginary line on a map.
And what does it measure?
Well, it measures distance between 2 points.
No, it measures something specifically. That's what I'm looking for.
Okay.
Sorry, Todd. Yeah, he's right. It is a line. It's a line on a map, but it measures something. It measures something.
So, should I be making more things up? Because I'm afraid if I make something up, I might accidentally get it wrong.
You might accidentally say the answer, right? So isohyet,
Yeah.
ISOHYET, isohyet. What does that represent? Todd was right.
Is that outside of Cincinnati on a map?
I think it might be. Caller line 1. What's your name? What's your guess?
It's Kevin.
Kevin, what's your guess, bud?
It's an imaginary line for measuring precipitation in a given
You got
area.
it. Yep. Yeah, it measures lines. It's a line on a map that measures equal rainfall amounts. So kind of like a temperature map, like your 70-degree isotherm, your 80-degree. Same thing with precip. It measures lines of equal rainfall. So congrats. And are you familiar? Do you fish a lot?
Too much.
Okay, well then this will come in handy for you. This will come in handy. Congrats. I'll put you on hold and we'll have Addison get all your information.
Okay, thank you.
All right, congrats. All right, good deal.
Well, one of the other headlines that is going on happens to be that the Federal Trade Commission and 5 different states have reached a settlement with John Deere. John Deere must now give farmers and independent technicians the same repair tools and software as their authorized dealers. So what does this mean for farmers? After this right to repair lawsuit has been settled, John Deere is required to provide to farmers as well as independent repair providers what they need for resources in fair and reasonable terms. That could be reading and clearing and resetting electronic fault codes, reprogramming of electronic components, restarting machines following an emissions shutdown, and more. I see this as two sides of the coin. Yes, especially with the economics that we have right now, people want to be able to work on their own equipment, and they need the tools to do that, whether it's through software, whether it is through manuals and guides, etc. But also I can see whether it's John Deere or car manufacturers want someone who knows what they're doing to be working on those items and not causing further harm. So it's a real balancing act of what needs to be done in all those places. But this was a long pending lawsuit. It was filed in Arizona, Michigan, Illinois, Wisconsin, and Minnesota, and it was started back in 2025. This did just come to a new agreement. There are press releases out there with specific details for those who are curious what it encompasses. So never be afraid to take a look at some of that and find out if it impacts you more closely than you imagined before. Also, as we think about where we're at, wheat harvest has begun here. The wheat crop in Australia, the largest in grain exporting, they have expected their harvest to shrink by nearly 30% year on year. And that's because of hot and dry conditions over the last few months and going forward. Right now, they're forecast that they will harvest 9.5 million tons of wheat. That's down from 13.3 million tons in 2025. Overall, wheat production was estimated at 22 million tons, which is down from 27 million tons. So Australia is behind in their wheat, just like we are.
Well, that'll do it for today's edition of Weather and Ag in Focus. I want to thank everybody for joining us, and congrats to Kevin on winning the Darter Plastic Bait Up Cup. Don't go anywhere. The Jay Thomas Show is coming up next.